from the man, or straight from the man in the Justice Department. We go above and beyond the headlines with Secretary Menardo Guevarra. Secretary Guevarra, good evening, sir.
Hello, Pia. Good evening, and good evening to your listeners.
Yes, thank you very much for coming to the phone, Secretary. I know how busy you are, but before anything else, can you tell us why a presidential pardon, even for someone as controversial as Marine Corporal, Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton, it cannot be appealed or questioned?
Well, the power to grant executive clemency, like pardons or reprieves or commutations, is a power given to the president under the Constitution that is exclusively executive in character, because it has got something to do with the implementation of the decision of the court. So the judiciary has nothing to do with this anymore. So since this is a plenary act on the part of the president, this is something that cannot be appealed by anyone. This is something that belongs exclusively to this is the prerogative which is exclusive on the part of the president, and he may do so at any time after final conviction of the sentenced person, and for whatever reason he deems fair and reasonable.
Secretary Guevarra, is the president obliged, or does he have to explain the reasons why he would grant pardon to anyone and not just to Pemberton?
The question is whether he's obliged to explain the reason for granting. Is that your question, Pia?
Yes. Hindi,
no,
diba?
he's not. He's not
yes,
obliged.
That's my question, sir.
Yes, in the many instances that he has exercised his prerogative or power to pardon or to commute sentences, he need not give any reason in the decree of executive clemency that he issues or signs. That this is precisely an act which is personal to him, although still official in character. And he does not really have to give any reason for granting or approving an application for executive clemency. The same in the case of Pemberton. But even without being obligated to explain, the president himself voluntarily gave a reason for thinking and considering the grant of pardon, absolute at that, to Pemberton. And that's what we heard last night when he explained to the public the reason behind his grant of absolute pardon to Pemberton.
Secretary Guevarra, can you tell us, yesterday, kausap ko si IBP President Domingo Cayos, and he was explaining that there are only 3 exceptions to the rule, that will not qualify someone to get pardoned, and Pemberton doesn't fall under any of them. And then you have a presidential prerogative functioning here. So wala talagang balakid. There's nothing that can stop this from happening. Not even if, people, different sectors oppose this and say that it is unfair or unjust.
None that I know of. Under the Constitution, the only limitation to the president's right to grant executive clemency is in cases of impeachment. But of course, that doesn't apply to the case of Pemberton. So nothing that I see can really prevent the president from giving absolute pardon. But, it is different when we are talking about conditional pardon, because that is subject to a condition, and of course, the sentenced person may or may not accept it depending on the conditions. And if any of the conditions is violated by the sentenced person, then the president can revoke the pardon given. But in the case of an absolute pardon, well, as the very term means, it's absolute.
And we just have one last minute with you, sir. Would you have recommended pardon, although noong sinabi ng Olongapo Court na he could be released, the Justice Department was supposed to file an MR, pero is this something you would have recommended, or the Justice Department doesn't figure in any recommendation for any pardon?
Well, we have already filed our motion for reconsideration with the trial court. before we came to know that the president intended to grant pardon to Pemberton. So we're not in a position to question the president's judgment regarding the exercise of a purely personal act of grace. So we will just let it go and let the motion for reconsideration die in natural death. It will become moot and academic, and we expect no further action from the court on the part of on this motion for reconsideration.
Oh, he made that announcement, but you did say he did consult you. When did he consult you, sir?
Well, he just informed us actually that he had this plan or this. In fact, it seems to me that he had already made up his mind and was just probably sounding me off if it's something that can actually be done. So, of course, I did not have to argue with him on the soundness or fairness of his decision, because that's purely personal to him. He felt that the entire situation had not been fair to Pemberton. So I just left it at that, because that's how he looked at the matter. So I just informed the president that if he intended to grant pardon, then nothing would really prevent him, because that's an act of grace that's provided for in the Constitution. That's his exclusive prerogative. And I don't see anything really very objectionable about his reason for granting Pemberton that absolute pardon.
All right. Secretary Menardo Guevarra of the Justice Department. Sir, thank you very much for joining us this evening.